This is Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium.
Today's guest is Pete Wolf Lacey. He is the singer of Sarajevo. In 1988, Pete started singing with bassist Jake Findlay, first joined forces in melodic heavy rock band Cherokee, where they honed their writing and stage skills, releasing one demo tape, Princess of Masquerade, which was later revamped for debut. After the demise of Cherokee, they decided to start their own band in 1989. Sarajevo was born. Welcome, Wolf. I wanted to welcome you. It is a pleasure to meet you. The band actually has a history with their name, and I just want to read what you wrote in your bio. In June 28th, 1914, in the Bosnian town Sarajevo, 2 shots were fired from one gun. These shots cost more than 20 million lives. The band has drawn its name from that town, Sarajevo, in commemoration of those that died. And you know, it's so interesting because I was reading through your bio and you have such a long history with the band, and we're going to talk about all of that. But I wanted to say that it's such a pleasure. I've been following you on social media, you know, listening to your stuff. I know you have something coming out, and it's just a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As you say, the band name was drawn from the town Sarajevo in Bosnia. We originally got it from the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was shot. That was the first shooting that led to the steps that began the First World War. So World War I began in Sarajevo, effectively.
Wow, that's amazing. I know, that's our history, right? It's pretty incredible. So the band started in 1988. Were you doing singing before then, or was this your first band that you had?
No, I started out with a band called Sanction originally. It was my first sort of step into music. We started out doing, like a lot of bands, cover songs initially, and then I started writing my own music and adding that into the set, some of which we carried over into the next band, Cherokee, which is the pre-Sarajevo band, and some of the songs followed into Sarajevo. And funnily enough, I'm in the process of recording the next album already. We've got about 18 demos that we've been working up, and there's 2 of the songs that I wrote originally back in the Sanction days, so pre-Sarajevo and pre-Cherokee.
Wow, that's so interesting. So to go back in time and realize that you can go back to those songs and revisit them, do you see yourself kind of tweaking those songs or leaving them the way you originally had them?
No, they've been tweaked quite a bit. Funnily enough, on this latest album that we've got out at the moment, Out of Darkness Cometh Light, there was a song called Fade Away, which was one of the very first songs that I wrote. And that's been revamped and put onto the last album that we've had out, which came out in November.
Wow, this is exciting. I want to go back in time with you because you're originally from the UK, right? So what area were you from? What was it like in your town? Was there musical influences in your lifetime?
I came from a small city in the UK in the south called Winchester, and it's quite an historic city. There was a King Alfred who was the king of, before we had kings of England in the UK. The UK was split into sections, and there was the lower area, the southern area was called Wessex, and King Alfred was the king of Wessex back in those days. So that's where I was born, that's where I grew up. It wasn't a huge music scene around my area. There were a few local bands. I remember a venue that we used to go to that had some great mod bands, actually, that used to play in there. The scene was small, but quite fun.
Well, that's cool. So how far is that? I mean, when you look at the map, how far is that from like London or like the downtown London scene?
Probably about 60 miles, so not that far, not that far. Funnily enough, I've moved away from Winchester, but I'm literally about 20 miles away from there now, 25 miles. I'm right on the coast, so I look out of my window here and I'm looking over the ocean.
Oh, that's really neat. Wow. So in the 1980s, when we start looking at the beginning of you forming the band and getting involved, what was your life like? Did you see yourself always on stage, or did you see yourself always being dedicated to music?
No, I can't say I did. Originally, I used to work in a bar, and this is how I got into the band. A guy came over, and I used to mess around in the bar, playing jokes on the customers and things like this. And a guy came and watched me while I was behind the bar one night. And at the end of the evening, he said to me, would you be interested in coming and singing for us? Because I've got a band. And I thought, well, he told me some of the songs, some of the bands that they played. They did ZZ Top covers and a great English band called Magnum. I don't know if you know of Magnum, but they were a fantastic institution over here. Their guitarist sadly died just over a year ago, so they've sort of stopped now, unfortunately. But I thought, well, there's no harm in trying. So I went out to the rehearsal hall, or his house, which was a big setup at his house. And I walked in the room, and there were Marshall amps all over the back walls. It was stacked out with Marshall amplifiers and speakers. And outside there was a big 45-seater coach. And I thought to myself, I think I might have got into something a little bit bigger than I expected. And I wasn't sure how to take it. So they initially they said, okay, we'll run through one of the songs on our own to start with, just to give you an idea of how we sound. And then when you feel comfortable, join in. So they started playing, and I thought, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So I just stepped up to the mic and started singing straight away. And so that's how it began. But no, I didn't imagine I'd be in it. Certainly not all these years later. So this is probably 35, probably about 37 years or more later than when I first began. I think initially I wanted to release, I set myself two goals. One was to release a record. Of course, in those days, it sort of swapped over from vinyl to CD. So I never released a vinyl record, but I managed to release a CD, which so that was one of my goals achieved. And the other one, there's a famous venue in London called the Marquee Club, who's everyone has played at the Marquee Club, from the Beatles to the Rolling Stones. All the big bands, including Guns N' Roses and Faster Pussycat, came over and played at the Marquee Club. So I set myself a goal of playing there and releasing a record. And fortunately, I've managed to do both of those things. So
That's really inspirational, especially for, a lot of people. They think to themselves, like, is this going to be just a hobby, or what is this all about? And when you actually put things in your path that you say, if I could achieve one of these, I'll be happy. And then when you look back and realize that you achieved both of them, then you're like thrilled. But you're like, you can't stop now. You got to keep going, right? You got to place other things in your path, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, I didn't set myself any higher goals than that, because I didn't want to set myself a target which I wouldn't be able to achieve. But I mean, we've been fortunate. We've got to play festivals and things, playing to thousands of people, which was amazing. And after the first Sarajevo album that we released, that was released back in 1993. That was called Tomorrow in the Hands of Yesterday's Man. The grunge scene set in, and we kind of came to a grinding halt. But I always felt that we had enough good songs, and it was a shame that we never got to release more albums. So when the opportunity came to release a second album, we got back together, reconnected back in 2020, and started work on The Strength of the Wolf is in the Pack album. So that gave me the opportunity to revisit some of the songs that we played back in the band in the original days. And subsequently on the next album, there's still one or two tracks from the early days that I've worked up and used on that. And there will be on the next album as well. So it's kind of a mixture of new stuff and old stuff.
I want to go back to the earlier days when you first started the band. Forming the band must have been kind of going from Cherokee to that band, a little bit different, not the same kind of band, right? So how would you didn't bring the same members with you? Like, how did you just kind of transition to that? Because it seems like that band became more popular than Cherokee, right?
Well, Cherokee ended, and for a short while, I played in another UK band called Ironheart, who were recording at the time. They were recording a follow up to their first 12-inch single. So we were recording a second 12-inch single. It never got released, actually, but they were a little bit heavier than my preference in music. It wasn't quite my style. So I recorded the tracks with them, but I never kind of got the feeling that that was the path that I wanted to follow. So Jake and I, who were originally in Cherokee, we always kept in contact. And so I said to him, well, look, this kind of music I'm doing with Ironheart isn't really what I want to do. How about we get a little band together doing exactly what we want to do, playing the music we want to play? We weren't bothered about if it was going to be a big hit or, if we were going to be popular. It was just a case of it's the music we want to do and we can get that out and not keep it inside, if you see what I mean. So that's what we did. We got, it was Jake, myself, and Eddie, the original drummer from Cherokee. And there were two guys from a band locally called Chicane who joined us. So it was two bands joining together, and that became Sarajevo.
So once you came together, did it seem to just kind of fall together? Like, were you getting gigs? Were you asked to do certain things? Like, how did you do all that to gain the momentum for someone to say, let's do a CD?
Well, when Sarajevo first got together, we rehearsed up a set and we went into a recording studio. And we were very lucky at the time because we knew that the recording studio that we were using was going out of business. They couldn't afford to keep it running. So the owner was allowing us to go in there cheap, very cheap. So we were spending like a weekend in there and we were paying 200 English pounds for a weekend, whereas normally it would cost around £2,000 for the weekend. So we were able to record basically the first album on the back of that because he knew he was going out of business anyway. So he allowed us to go in there to record what we wanted to do just to give him some pocket money until he could sell the studio on. And once we'd made the recordings, we sent them off to a couple of local radio stations and got some airplay locally, which was before we went out playing live. Essentially, we sort of gained an audience before we'd even played a live show. So we set up a tour, which was called the Remembrance Tour. We went out playing. It was basically around the south of England, but it was great because we'd already got an audience from the plays on the radio. So people sort of swamped in to see us. So, that's how it all got going initially.
Well, that's cool. I know that you ended up touring with a lot of well-known people, Ricky Byrd and Ian Hunter, I think.
Ian Hunter, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about the band touring with all these people. What were your impressions or, tell me all about that.
Well, it was great. When we did the Ian Hunter tour, funnily enough, it was the guys that were doing the sound and lighting on the tour were the guys that did the sound and lighting on the Europe Final Countdown tour. So the Europe band, when they did their
I love them.
When they did their Final Countdown tour, we had the guys that did the lighting and sound doing the Ian Hunter stuff for us. And he had a backing band that was Scandinavian. I think they were either Swiss or Norwegian, I think the backing band were. But they had Ricky Byrd that was playing guitar for him as well. We did a great tour with him. That was absolutely fantastic. I do remember we used to stop at the service stations. So in between gigs, as you were driving from one place to the other to refuel with gas and top up on all your food. And every time we stopped there, the sound and lighting guys from the Europe tour they always got there slightly ahead of us. And whenever we got out of our van, they were ready for us with water bombs. So we always got pelted with water bombs.
That's
We had
so
to go in.
funny.
We had to go in
The
these places
hijinks of
wet.
touring, right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
It's interesting that you mentioned Ricky Byrd. I just saw him about maybe a week or two ago down at the Cutting Room in New York City. We had a Peter Criss event. They were honoring him for the Raven Drum Foundation. Actually, Rick Allen from Def Leppard was there as well. That was the first time I saw Ricky perform live. He's incredible energy, that guy.
He's a great guitarist. He's a really nice guy. I know he's got a new album, or well, a couple of months old now, but he's got an album out that he's still promoting, and it's great. I mean, he's got a great sound to him, and he's played with some really great artists.
Yes. I know in your bio it also mentions Steve Newman. What was that about?
Steve Newman, we played years ago. Do you know Steve? Steve Newman?
No, I don't.
Well, he was a guy. He's had several albums out on. I think it's Escape Records, the melodic rock record label. He used to play in a band. We put on like a mini indoor festival. Sarajevo put on several of these festivals at a venue close to us. He was on the bill playing keyboards for a band. I think you got me trying to delve back into the archives now in my brain cells, and I think they were called Cypress, the band, or something like that. Cypress, or he played keyboards for them. But then he went on to do his own solo career, and he's played with a number of other people. I think he's actually recording Dennis Churchill Dries at the moment, the singer from White Sister and Tattoo Rodeo. So I know that he's...
Wow. White Sister. Talk about a blast from the past. That was my favorite. I mean, I remember literally getting the cassette of White Sister and playing it over and over again. So that's like, wow, that's amazing.
Well, I loved the first White Sister album, but I especially loved the Tattoo Rodeo stuff that he went on to afterwards. I know that they went back and they did a after Tattoo Rodeo, they went back and did another White Sister album, but I believe some of the members have passed away now, so I don't think there's going to be any follow-ups to those.
Yes, their music actually, I was a teen and I was listening to it, and certain songs like Straight from the Heart and certain things, even now, so many years later, I could see exactly where I would sit. I would sit on my front step. I was like, a teen, smoking my cigarettes, listening to the music, like thinking I was super cool, But, that's what I love about you guys in the music business, because you create music and it's your creation, but the impact on the fans, like so many fans, I have a lot of friends that they have a tattoo of the name of the band, or there's a tattoo of the guy's face on their arm. And it's like, that's my face on your arm, it's just the impact on the fans is so incredible. And just personally for myself, when I was in Iraq, the only thing really that was accessible to us was any CDs that we brought over with us. So we were listening kind of with our headphones, listening to CDs. And music and the conversation about lyrics to me is always so deep, because you could say, well, this is my favorite song, and another person could say, that's my favorite song, and I could say, well, this is what I think it means. And the other person's like, absolutely not. Like, it's totally something different. And it's like, wow. Like, once you hear someone else's perspective, you're like, I think they're right. But when you create these songs, and I know that you do a lot of songwriting yourself, where does the inspiration come, for weaving in different lyrics or knowing what's going to work or what's not going to work?
Well, I suppose it's like anyone who writes songs. Some of it is everyday life, things that happen to you personally that you would transport into the songs. Other things, I've written songs which are purely just story based. So I've made up a story. There was a great ballad. It's one of my favorite ones that I've written, which was on my last album, the Sarajevo last album, The Strength of the Wolf is in the Pack. and the song was called "What I Give for One More Night with You," and it's a song about a couple who go to a beach together, separately. Sorry, they go with their separate group of friends to a beach one evening, and they're both groups of friends are partying and having fun. And this couple happen to stumble upon each other, and they build a little fire, and they drink wine around this fire, and they have this amazing night on the beach. At the end of the night, they feel a real sadness because they have to go their separate ways. So they disperse and go about their lives. But a year to the day from their meeting, the guy couldn't get the girl out of his head. So he went back to the beach, and there were still embers of the fire where they met. Uh, and as he was stood there reflecting on her and what had happened that night, he turned to leave, and she was stood there. So it had also had that much of an impact on her that she'd returned as well. And so the song ends, and I fell to my knees and cried. So, it was
That's
just, it was just,
beautiful. Oh my God, that's beautiful. That could be like a mini movie.
uh, that's the thing with the lyrics to the song. You can sit there and close your eyes, and you can picture the video in the background to it. It just tells the story perfectly. So, you know, there's some songs like that are just made up. And then going back to, like we said in the initial stages with the band name, there's a lot of songs that we've written which are military based. So we've got a couple of songs that are about how the First World War began and how it led through, and the processes led through to begin the Second World War as well. We've written a song called Remembrance Day, which you call it something else over there. When you remember your
Yeah, so that's
fallen.
Memorial Day. That's this month
Okay,
in May. Yeah, it's
that's it.
usually like the third weekend in May. Yeah, Memorial
Uh,
Day. Yeah.
Over here we have Remembrance Day, and it's the 11th of November. So it's the 11th day of the 11th month, the 11th hour, and then we fall silent for 2 minutes. And so I wrote a song about this, and it's all the video, which is on YouTube, has got all World War One archive footage. So, but it's commemorating the soldiers from both sides, because people were brought into the war that didn't want to be involved in it, but they had no choice. So it's commemorating everyone. So not just one side, but both sides.
You know, you make a really good point because people get very confused with the calendar of military events. So, Memorial Day here in the United States is in May, and we remember our servicemen and women that have died. So, that's called Memorial Day. However, November 11th in November is our Veterans Day. So we're actually celebrating those that have served in service. But a lot of times people will, on Memorial Day, send a message to a soldier or a retired soldier and say, thank you for your service. And the retired soldier or the currently serving soldier will say, no, this is the commemoration of those that have made the ultimate sacrifice. So a lot of people in the general public, especially in America, don't realize that it's clearly two different events with two different meanings to it. So it's interesting. That's why I find your commemoration day, the 11/11, interesting, because it sounds like there's a big focus on the ultimate sacrifice, that we do for May. So we have 2 days, you have one. So it sounds like you put both into one, where we have two separate. Is that correct?
Well, we've to a certain extent, we've just had a 8th of May here was something called VE Day. So that was the Second World War, and that's VE stands for Victory in Europe. So there's been commemorations and street parties all up and down the country, and the radio stations and TV stations have been interviewing the few veterans that are left to tell their stories about what occurred, and how it affected them and their families and their friends and the people that died around them. So there's several. I mean, there's VE Day, which is Victory in Europe, but then the war carried on with Japan. So then there's VJ Day, which is when the war really stopped, because a lot of the people that were in Europe then got posted to Asia, to different parts of Asia to continue the fight. But yeah, I mean, there's a few significant dates that are kind of remembered here. But the 11th is the one that is celebrated or commemorated, not celebrated as such, but commemorated every year.
Yeah, I find this very fascinating because I always, my cousin is Andy Biggio, and he wrote the book called The Rifle, and he also wrote a second book called The Rifle 2. And when he came back from serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, he was a Marine. He picked up an M1 Garand, which is like the rifle during that period of time in World War II. And he said there aren't many veterans left of that era. So he went out to meet them. And when he would meet them, he would bring the rifle. And he had one of those white pens and said, "Please sign my rifle." And every time he had someone sign, they said, "Well, do you want to hear my story?" And he was like, "Okay, you have a story." And the first book, The Rifle, is about really heroic things that these men were doing, fighter pilots and, different stories about what happened back home and what was going on with their bunkmate, and they got separated, and who lived and who didn't live. And he met so many of them because he actually does a motorcycle event once a year called the Boston Wounded Vet Run. He said, "Well, I have to bring these guys to see my motorcycle event." And we all started meeting these men. And the average age was like 90 to 102, And here we were all going meeting these men. And then seeing their story in Andy's book, Andy was like, "Oh my God, I have more men to talk about." So he wrote a second book. And within the last 2 years, so many of them, we would say, "Oh, he was my favorite," or, they're all our favorites because their stories are just tremendous. They've now passed away. So, Andy's like, "I think I have to keep writing because it's their real testament to what really went on." And it's interesting, especially the way you talk about how Europe has remembered them. It's all about that. It's all about continuing to educate people, because even me, I mean, I spent 30 years in the military. My rank was a colonel. I don't know half of what I should know about history. And I mean, I'm not proud of that. You know what I mean? It's just, I was so, bogged down with everything else in our life. We can't become experts on everything. But it's amazing that people actually have that sense of duty to remember. So I really appreciate, especially how you've taken the band and the name and brought it into your songwriting, because your songs are probably going to outlive all of us, right? So that message continues to educate.
That's part of the reason why I wanted to record more songs than just the original first album. It's simply so that I left a legacy after I was long gone. So there was something there that people could listen back to and think, "Oh, that's actually sparked something in my imagination now." So when I was at school, I had a secondary school teacher. So I don't know what your grading, your year are slightly different to the UK, but I would have been about 14 or 15. And my history teacher was a guy called Keith Brown. And he had such an engaging way of talking that he drew me in. And that's what gave me the fascination with the First World War history and leading on. And he got me interested in things like the Russian Revolution and moving on into the Second World War. But my primary interest was based around the First World War. So my partner, who is, you'll see when it's released next Thursday, she's doing the keyboards on the video. She's more of a historian based around the Second World War, whereas my focus is more on the First World War. But it was all, as I say, it was all thanks to my history teacher back in high school, who was he just made it come alive and made it interesting. If he hadn't have if he hadn't been so compelling, it would have passed me by, and I'd nothing would have been written from me.
That's amazing. I really find that fascinating. Did anyone in your family serve in the military, or do you have any connections to any military service in your family?
Yeah, my grandfather was in the Air Force during the Second World War. So,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. You know, I have to go back to something that you had said earlier because I find it so remarkable. I talk about this a lot in the work that I do when I talk about being a psychic and a medium and having connections with people's energy. You were working in the bar and someone just happened to see how you were reacting or entertaining kind of, the barmaids and all of that. How did they know you could sing? Were you just like belting out Sinatra? Like what was happening that they identified you as a singer?
No, well, I didn't realize it, but at the time, there was a lad I used to go to school with, and this guy that came to watch me in the bar, he had already spoken to him, and he asked him if he knew anyone who might be interested in singing for his band, and he told him what sort of music, and he knew I was into that kind of music. Back in those days, well, even today, the majority of UK radio stations just play a very slim kind of it's not, you don't get a large selection of music on UK national radio stations. It tends to be, this is what we're playing, this is what you've got to listen to. If you don't like that, you've then got to go into your more specialized digital radio stations or online stations to hear the sort of music that you like. But as I say, back then he said that I was into his particular sort of music, so he told him where I worked, and he came out and watched me then. He didn't know I could sing. I didn't know if I could sing or not, but he just said, "Would you like to come and try out?" So I thought, yeah, why not? Give it a go.
That's amazing, though, because I find certain things in life are serendipitous. It's like if you talked yourself out of it, you wouldn't have gone. All of those things that you just say, like, I could have stopped myself, or something could have stopped that person and said, I'm not going to even invite him to do this or whatever, So certain things I think are meant to be, which is really incredible. Do you feel that you kind of saw things happening? Like I always kind of tease people and say like, I wish I could see everything, but you could sometimes feel it in your gut. And I always call that like a gut feeling. When you started to kind of sing with the band or see how the festivals were unrolling, did you get that feeling in your gut like, okay, this is not going to be like just a hobby for me?
Well, no, not really. If I'm perfectly honest, because I never sought fame and stardom. It wasn't something that I wanted, and I didn't think that I'd feel comfortable with, if I was walking down the street, all these people coming up to me and asking for autographs and, trying to speak. So to a certain extent, I've kind of kept away from that side of things until we reconnected back in 2020. I never had a Facebook page or anything like that. So it was only when we had to start promoting the band that I opened a Facebook page and started pushing it again, just to get the name back out there. And of course, because it had been so long since I'd been out of the scene, I wasn't really sure how to go about getting people interested in this again. So it's been a big learning curve. But I've always had more of an interest in the creative side. So the writing aspect and the recording, going into the studio, that's always been my thing. I liked coming up with, so having nothing, having a spark of an idea and then seeing that transform into a finished song. Because when I hear it in my head, I can hear how I want it to be finished. So it's then a case of trying to get that on tape or now digital recording. And since we reformed, I've then gone into the video editing side. And whilst, well, as you've probably seen from some of our videos, whilst they're not the best edited videos or things, I've had to learn all that side of things for myself. So it's the creative side that I enjoy more so than seeking fame and what have you.
Yeah, well, as you revisit this, it's a new world that we're living in, right? So, just the idea of social media. I mean, when your band kind of, the grunge scene took over, it didn't just affect your band, but it was every band, And a lot of people realized that there's going to be a change in music. So, when that was happening, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have TikTok, but also with the transition of having all of that, it's working in some way, right? So it helps work as a promoter. It helps work as a marketing campaign. It does work. Did you have any instance where a fan reached out to you and said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you're back"? Like when you mentioned White Sister before, I completely lit up. It was just like I was a teen all over again. Did you have any of those circumstances where someone had said, "Oh my God, you're back"?
Yeah, it was quite strange because it was probably, I don't know, 35 years or more since, no, when was it? 93. So 1993 was when the last a CD came out, the first CD came out. And then 2022 was when the follow-up came out. So what's that, 29 years, isn't it? So 29 years between album releases. To be honest with you, I probably thought most of the people who used to come to see us back then would have either passed away or moved on to other things. So it was really nice to reconnect with so many people that used to be at the front of the stage, when we used to play and used to come. We used to book coach trips and, to our shows, and they used to come with us up on these trips. We used to book from the south of England. We used to go and play in Wales, which is a few hours away from us. So we'd hire coaches and take people up there, but we'd make a big day of it. So we'd stop in the big town centres and make a shopping day, so the girls could go around all the shops and do their things, and we could go and look through all the record stores and things like this. But it was great to see so many that remembered us from back then come back and have reconnected with us, even so much as we'd all gone our separate ways. So all the old road crew that we used to have from back in the day, reconnecting with them. And, we've met up and had coffees and things like this and gone for breakfast together. And so it's been great.
So with the new releases, and I know you have something being released soon, are you going to be playing live, or are you just going to be releasing music?
But initially, the idea was to just be a recording band. So when we reconnected and we did The Strength of the Wolf is in the Pack album, which was the one that came out in 2022, we decided that we were going to release an album for charity. So we released it for two charities. One was the Red Cross Ukraine Crisis Appeal, and one was for a local military charity who helped veterans over here called Forgotten Veterans. So we didn't have any plans after that. So we were just going to release that, raise money for the charities, and then we'd wing it and see what happened. But we continued, and so the next album came out in November, and there's a song on the album called Eternal Flame. And ironically, I stumbled across a festival in Sarajevo, in the city of Sarajevo, which was called the Eternal Flame Festival. And the promoter contacted me and he asked if we would be interested in playing their festival. He only gave me a few weeks' notice, so I wasn't able to get everything organised to do it this year. But he's come back to me about us playing there next year, and he wants us to play on Valentine's Day next year at the festival in Sarajevo. So that would be great. And we'd have to get a couple of new touring band members in to come and play because we haven't got a permanent drummer at the moment, and we need either a second guitarist or a keyboard player to come and play because it wouldn't be financially viable for us to be able to fly Nilva, our keyboard player, over from Peru to play just a one-off show. So we will probably do that if we can get that organised, the festival. And also, before we do the festival, we want to do one or two shows to obviously hone the sound. And because it's been so many years since I was last on stage, I want to reacquaint myself with that. So I think we're just going to start off by doing that and then seeing how things gel and seeing if we can take it from there.
Wow, it's amazing. I really am excited about that because it's almost ironic. Like you have the name of the song, they have the name of the festival. Like it's kind of, again, like serendipitous, but meant to be. And I really do think you're going to have a great reception for that because just like recently, the guys I know in Sabotage, Chris Caffrey and Jeff Plate, they went over to Europe and they're doing Sabotage and they're just like completely selling out. People have not forgotten about these great bands, and it brings out their youth again. There's some fans out there that are like expert fans. They could tell you what song was on what album and at what time and all of that, So I think that would be a really warm reception for you. That's pretty incredible.
Going back to them, I remember seeing them playing over in the UK, Sabotage. I think I'm trying to remember if it was just before John's brother was killed. I've got a feeling it was just before he was killed. And they used to do, when they came on stage doing the Hall of the Mountain Kings song, I remember they all wore Burger King hats, bought Burger King crowns. So Hall of the Mountain King with Burger King crowns on.
That's hilarious. Wow. Wow.
I think if I remember rightly, I think the opening band were Overkill.
Well, that's an amazing lineup. I love Overkill. Wow. Very cool. I know. Well, it is really. I want you to be able to promote all of your social media, what you have coming out. I think it's coming out this week. So let the audience know what's happening.
So Thursday, the 15th of May, we've got the new video single coming out. The song is called Can You Hear Me Through the Dark? This is the final video from the album. We've had 4 videos released previously. The first one was Already Dead. The second was called A Question of Honor. The third was a cover of an American band, Crimson Glory from Florida. We did a cover of their song Lonely. The last one that we had out was a song called Lost in Forever Tonight. So the next one and the final one from this album is called Can You Hear Me Through the Dark? And it comes out this coming Thursday. It'll be released on YouTube at 7 p.m. UK time. So I think that is, for where you are based in the USA, that would be about 2 p.m. if I remember correctly. Social media wise, we haven't got a website, but we do it through a Facebook page, which is Sarajevo Band /music page Sarajevo Rocks. So that's where you'll find us on Facebook. Also the same with Instagram, Sarajevo Rocks, and X. Formerly Twitter, Sarajevo Rocks. Also with YouTube, it's at Sarajevo Rocks. ROCKS, not ROXX.
Very good. Very exciting. Well, we're going to roll out with your song, Can You Hear Me Through the Dark? And it's been a pleasure to have you on, Wolf.
Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate it. It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you. Here we go now with Can You Hear Me Through the Dark?
is 2 steps from goodbye. I felt love before. It's addictive. I've gotta have more. dark.
You have been listening to Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium, Dream Central Station, LLC. My audio editor is Al Hemberger at the Loft Recording Studios in Bronxville, New York. This is WNEW 102.7 FM radio.